Luke chapter 14, verses 25 to 33.
Glory to you, O Lord.
Now large crowds were traveling with Jesus, and he turned and said to them, "Whoever comes to me and does not hate father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, yes, and even life itself, cannot be my disciple. Whoever does not carry the cross and follow me cannot be my disciple. For which of you, intending to build a tower, does not first sit down and estimate the cost, to see whether he has enough to complete it? Otherwise, when he has laid the foundation and is not able to finish, all who see it will begin to ridicule him, saying, 'This fellow began to build and was not able to finish.' Or what king, going out to wage war against another king, will not sit down first and consider whether he is able with 10,000 to oppose the one who comes against him with 20,000? If he cannot, then while the other is still far away, he sends a delegation and asks for the terms of peace. So therefore, none of you can become my disciple if you do not give up all your possessions." The Gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, O Christ. Please be seated. Well, here we are, my last Sunday with you. I have thoroughly enjoyed these 8 weeks. I can't believe it's been that much. Really 9 if you count Easter. And I really will miss seeing all of you next week, though it's going to be really hard to be here if I wanted to, because my wife and I are going to be in New Jersey next week. That's a bit of a commute. But in any event, we've got today one of those Gospels where Jesus sort of shocks us by what he's saying. Really? Whoever comes to me and does not hate father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, yes, even his own life, cannot be my disciple? Wow. That's tough words. And of course, if we took those words absolutely literally, I'm sure we should feel uncomfortable. We'd want to run in the opposite direction. It sounds so opposite of everything Jesus usually is about. I mean, isn't Jesus the one always preaching? Love your neighbor, love God, love yourself, love even your enemies. And now he's saying he wants us to hate the people that love us the most? Really? Well, it helps to know a little bit about the language Jesus spoke. It's Aramaic, which is a variant of Hebrew. And Hebrew had an interesting sort of thing. Hebrew was one of these languages that had absolutely no nuance to it. Everything was either black or it was white. It was good or it was bad. It was love or it was hate. There was no kind of or somewhat. You're either all in or you are all out. So when Jesus wants to set up this thought that maybe there are going to be people who are going to be opposed to what you're about being a Christian, maybe there's no way in Hebrew for him to say, well, I'd prefer you not to have anything to do with them, or I'd like it if maybe you either love or you hate. And so Jesus is saying what we might say in more nuanced English, look, I get how weak you are. I get how easily you can fall from me. This Christian movement is a new thing. you're going to have relatives who are going to try to deprogram you. You've got folks who are going to try to say to you, you shouldn't be following that Jesus nut. And so you're going to be tempted to fall away. You're going to be tempted to worship something other than what I'm trying to get you to understand and worship. So I'm trying to protect you from this. And so what I'm doing is I'm shocking you into reality. In my experience as a pastor, I've come across this at least a time or two. As most of you know, like Pastor Luther, I lived most of my ecclesiastical life in the Episcopal Church. And we had in our congregation, this is a couple of congregations ago, we had a woman who was a dyed-in-the-wool, what they call cradle Episcopalian. You know, I still think there are cradle Lutherans too. You know what I mean. Folks who were born, raised, baptized, everything. That she was, born and bred in all of it. And then she met a man and married who was from about as opposite an expression of Christianity as you could imagine. He was from one of these very evangelical, fundamentalist, Bible-thumping, pulpit-pounding kind of churches. And he made it really clear that she could go to his church, but he wasn't coming to hers because she was one of those Episcopalians. He did reluctantly agree to be married in the Episcopal Church because he knew she'd been raised in it. She knew that was her home church, and it was where her parents went, and all of that sort of thing. But boy, just as soon as they got married, he laid down the law. And I'll hand it to her because the reason I even know all of this is she laid it down back. She said, if you want to go to your church, you can go to your church. I'm still going to my church. And then he said, well, that's fine, but you can't raise the kids in it. And for a little bit, she sort of went along with that. And then she started hearing some of the things they were teaching the kids in his church. And she finally said, I'm bringing them to my church, like it or not. Well, that worked for a little while, a very little while. And then to make peace, to keep from their household being torn asunder by all of this, she just dropped out. She didn't go to his church, and she didn't go to her church either. What's happening here? She is letting something stand between her and that which she values, that which is important to her. And I don't think for a moment that she didn't value her husband's church or what he valued. I'm not saying that at all. But she was wanting to make her choice, and she just simply was not in an atmosphere where she could make it. And here's the upstart of it all, and this is the one that I sort of want to drive home with all of this, because you see there are consequences when we let others influence what's important to us. Because who ultimately suffered from this decision to just drop out altogether? The family, the kids. Because now they weren't getting raised in either church. They weren't getting that foundation for their Christian walk from her husband's church or from her church. Simply by dropping out, the two of them did their family a terrible disservice. And I want to suggest to you that in some ways, in this very pluralistic society we live in, it's easy for us to succumb to the same pressures. It is not easy to be loyal to Jesus. It is difficult to live out individually as well as collectively what Jesus describes in the gospel today as bearing our own cross and following. To an extent, what I see Jesus speaking here is just a practical realism. If you do not nurture your faith day by day and week by week and year by year, your faith's going to die. Your faith can't live in an environment where it's not being nurtured. And mind you, Jesus isn't promising the sky here either. He's not promising an illusionary utopia, a Shangri-La, a castle in the clouds. He was reminding them the walk is going to be tough. But the walk is going to be costly, but worth it. The walk is going to be costly, but worth it. It strikes me that if there is anyone who perhaps personifies and really manifests the costliness of following Christ, it is the Lutheran theologian and pastor, of whom I'm sure many of you have heard, Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who profoundly understood that this life in Christ can be a costly life, and for him, literally, it was one that cost him his life. He defied the Nazi authorities in Germany and ended up in a concentration camp for his faith. Bonhoeffer wrote what is probably one of the most influential books I have ever read, even though it's only about this thick. It's a thin little volume, but boy, is it powerful. It's called The Cost of Discipleship. And in that little book, Bonhoeffer writes this: when Jesus calls a person, he bids them to come and die. When Jesus calls a person, he bids them to come and die. Now, as I say, for him personally, that actually literally became true. But let's face it, for most of us, that's not the case. Most of us aren't going to die for our faith. But here's what I think he was trying to say to the 99% of us who aren't going to physically die for our faith. And it's this: there is something inside you, something that's keeping you from being fully committed, something that's keeping you from following, that you need to look deeply at and identify and say, that has to die if I am to live in Christ. If there is something holding you back, if there's something that is a cross that you need to, in essence, conquer in order to bear the cross for Christ, you need to look deep within and see, what is that thing that needs to die within me? I'd like to suggest that that is something that also is the case with Christian congregations. You're about to go through a process which I know you've been through before, but I'm convinced that even if it's only been, 4 years or whatever since last you did it, enough has grown and changed that it'll be worth going through again. You're about to go through a congregational assessment as you begin the process of identifying who God is sending you to be your next pastor. And a piece of that is, what here needs to die in order that we may better live for Christ? Who have we allowed ourselves to become that maybe isn't who we're called to become? What has tempted us and attracted us to just take the easy way to be followers of Christ and not the hard way, but that hard way that's worth it. I see congregations do this all the time. Indeed, there are some that I'm convinced are absolutely dedicated to the easier way mentality. They have succumbed to a modern day mentality that abandons the cross so that everything can just feel good. You've probably seen some of them. Come to this church and you'll be materially happier. You'll have a wealthier life. Now, they don't use those terms to say it, but you've heard of these churches that have what they call the prosperity gospel. I've got news for you. If you're following the Christ who's proclaimed in this gospel, it is not a prosperity gospel. It is not about success and popularity and keeping up with the Joneses. And indeed, if you start seeing a church like that, I guarantee you, look at that church 20, 30, 50 years from now, you'll find it's in decay because that cannot sustain a congregation. Just like it cannot sustain a household. We need to grow, we need to mature, and that sometimes means tough times and tough decisions. Jesus knew that. This new Jesus, who was just coming on the scene, knew that those followers that he was just beginning to nurture were going to have a tough road ahead of them if they were going to carry forth into reality what he was planting in their hearts. But he also knew if they would persevere through that, it would be the greatest treasure in their lives. And so today, he shocks them. Unless you are willing to hate that other thing. Again, remembering he's speaking in Aramaic. You cannot fully love me and my gospel. And so my question to you on this, my last Sunday with you, is simply this. What will it cost you at Holy Trinity to put Christ